everybody. Welcome back to Small Talk Japan. On this program, we talk about all things Japan in English. My name is Mitch, and these are my co-hosts.
Natsuki.
And Alex, hello.
And today we're here to talk about, is there really a middle class in Japan? Which I would suggest that we're all probably middle class living in Japan. So the answer is yes. Goodbye, guys.
See you next week.
We had an episode, was it last episode, where it was like, is Japan a high-tech mecca? And I asked the question, and Alex was like, no, it isn't. I was like, that was the end of the show.
Yeah, I posted that on LinkedIn, actually, and the first comment on LinkedIn was also, no, it isn't. So, I've not watched it yet. No, it isn't.
But on this show, we actually do want to talk about we actually did talk about, is Japan a high-tech mecca, yes or no? And it was an interesting show. It goes on for about 50 minutes. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. But today we're talking about, is there a middle class in Japan? And what does it mean to be middle class? Not even just in Japan, but all around the world. So first, before we start talking about Japan, though, I want to get kind of a little background between me and Alex, and also Natsuki a little bit here. Alex, tell us, you came from England.
Yeah.
Were you middle class? Were you upper class? Were you lower class? What is class in England? It's
lower
different.
class.
What does that even mean in England? Like, it's a different situation, right?
So in England, basically, there's upper class, middle class, and working class.
Oh, you guys don't call them lower class
Don't
people?
call it lower class. It's working class. And my parents are from a working class background.
Yeah.
And they, did well in business or whatever. And I'm probably from kind of a middle class background.
I would suggest that your family, when because you guys had a successful IT business, you probably made the shift, didn't you, from middle to a little bit
I think so.
higher class?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it depends on where you go to school, the area you live in, the kind of people you associate with, the kind of pastimes you have.
Do people all think of themselves as like, oh, I'm upper class, or oh, I'm working class?
I think people aspire to be, probably middle class. But some people are very proud of being working class as well, like blue-collar workers, things like that, salt of the earth type
is it true?
People and things, whatever,
So in America, we consider class like your income, like how many zeros you have in your bank account.
That's not always true. So things like upper-class people, really go on things like the name.
In England, right?
Yeah, in England, and the status as well. It's not really about how much money you've got. So there's this weird phenomenon where you'll get people who are of very, very high class, and they'll dress in really scruffy clothing and drive a really shit car. And the reason they do that is because they don't need those status identifiers to support their class.
So is that like when Warren Buffett drives his 30-year-old car to work?
That's a different thing, I think, slightly. So, it's like if you've got like a stately home and huge grounds in the middle of like, some lovely place in the British countryside, you don't need to drive a sports car to show your status off. You know what I mean? So they've slipped into this weird kind of scruffiness. And I heard somebody else talking about this, saying rock stars are like that as well, because they've got so much cachet and cool already, they don't even need to do basic hygiene. You know what I mean? And they're still cool.
Well, what's his name? Russell Brand?
Yeah.
Everybody knows him. He's famous. He's he's hot. Like, women love him. He's smart. And every time I see him, he looks like he's like homeless.
Yeah.
Like Keanu Reeves is the same way.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves like walks around, like there's pictures of Keanu like walking around with his shoes falling apart. And you're like, what's going on with you, bro?
Sad Keanu.
Sad Keanu.
Yeah. But, the class is a weird thing in Britain, and it's so ingrained into our culture. It's not just about how much money you've got.
How do you feel when, like, okay, let's say you're upper class and I'm working class. Like, do our interactions, like, change?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think there's that much interaction, to be honest with you.
Really? They just don't associate?
Yeah, I mean, like, class is something that's been, gradually eroded, over the years. It's probably a good thing, But, interests are very different. You know what I mean? So, typical working class type person might want to go to a football match or something like that. And an upper class person might want to go to the theatre or something instead. It's just that kind of thing. So there isn't a great deal of crossover.
So working class people are more fun.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. And then, more friendly as well, I think. Generally. Northerners tend to be thought of as working class, but that's not a good distinction because there are, upper class people up north as well. So.
I once have read in Japanese gossip magazine, and David Beckham is from working class. So even though he is very succeeded soccer player, but his accent is very from...
Yeah. So
that's another thing. The accent of the people in Britain, that defines you, doesn't it? Your level of education.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And the kind of school you go to, obviously, as well. So if you go to a private school, that's like a barrier to entry to get in. So not everybody can get in there. And that kind of means the people you associate with are of a certain income level and a certain background as well.
So it's not just income; it's income, mostly background and then income.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, private schools, you do get a good education, but at the same time, it gives you confidence more than anything else to think I can do this. There's that weird kind of arrogance that comes with it, I think.
So it's more of like a mindset then.
Yeah, it's a mindset, I think. Yeah.
Because like we have another Brit living with us in this city. We have several Brits, but one that used to work for me, and he's my friend. Like we'd walk around and go to like department stores and stuff. And he'd be like, "Oh, everybody here's just like upper class, and I don't feel right here." And I would be like, "What are you talking about?" Like it was just like foreign concept to me. Like I never walked into a place and thought of class.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't appeal to, come to my mind. I would think, oh, this stuff is expensive. I can't afford this.
Right. Yeah.
But I wouldn't think, oh, this is a certain level of class.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of mindset, I do kind of understand it. I mean, I don't really think like that, but people, do have that, I think.
So my background, I'm from Vegas in America, and like we have valet people who park cars that make $100,000 a year. Right? $100,000 a year is a lot of money. That is firmly middle class. But I mean, I think that those people were in your country, they would be considered working class because they park cars.
Yeah.
Right? Even though they're making $100,000 a year. In America, you just look at your tax bracket, how much money you make. And then for the most part, I mean, I'm sure if you go to some like super white bread areas of America, they'll like look down on you and, oh, you're from new money or whatever. I'm sure that exists. I'm sure that happens, but screw those places and I don't live there. But in Vegas, anyway, if you have money, you're king. That's it.
Yeah.
Like money talks. It doesn't matter where you come from, where your money comes from. It's like, oh, you have money right this way, sir.
Yeah.
But my background, I came from not just like working class, but from the poor. Like my mom has 7 children. My dad passed away really young. And so we were like food stamps. Like that's where I came from. So the reason why I made the jump from the lower lows class to where I am now is because of like free education and things like that were provided for me in America. But yeah, very few people from my upbringing even finished high school.
Yeah.
Like most of them are like, they have, legal problems. Some of them are in jail. I mean, like I came from a pretty rough background, and one of the very few people that I know that actually made it out of there. And so I have, I think, a very different perspective on the Japanese middle class than someone who was like, if I was raised wealthy in America and I came to Japan, I think that I would have a different perspective of it. Now, Natsuki, your background is that your father worked really, really hard, but you guys also lived fairly comfortably.
I guess, yes.
You guys had a 4-story house.
Used to be.
No Japanese kids are raised in a 4-story house.
Some of them.
What's the name? Natsuki. So
okay.
Natsuki came from a pretty, I would say, well-off-to-do background. She was able to go abroad, which is not everybody can do.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think that you ever grew up thinking like, oh, we're poor.
Right. That's true.
Okay. So we can say that, right?
Okay.
And then you went to university, and now you and your husband both have career jobs, and you have a daughter, and you live in a pretty nice house.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd say like we're all kind of firmly middle class by the definition that we want to go by.
Okay. But what is a middle class in Japan?
Yeah.
Well, does Japan have a class system is the big question, I guess.
Can you talk historically about this?
Historically, yeah. I mean, it did originally.
Borakumin, right? It's a kind of a bad word, but the Borakumin existed.
Yeah, that's true.
Before, which were, they had almost a caste system, actually, where the Borakumin were like the untouchables. How do you define this in English? It's like a...
So they were like an underclass, essentially. So basically, during the Edo period, you had, your 4-tier system with, the nobles and aristocracy, and then the warrior class, and then, the merchants, and then the farmers. Sorry, farmers and then merchants in the bottom. And then the kind of burakumin and that kind of people were people who lived close to the rivers, basically, and also did work with like animal flesh or leather.
Yeah, people that touch dead things.
Yeah, so it's considered unclean, I suppose.
Yeah.
And those kind of regions were kind of separated as well. So the wealthy kind of jokomachi, the castle town samurai would live on big houses on the main street.
Yeah.
And then in Kagoshima, you would have like goshi, so like half farmer, half samurai.
Okay.
Who would live out in the countryside. And they would be, discriminated against by the samurai in the town because they were seen as being lower class.
Yeah.
So there are some stories of those goshi, the kind of farmer samurai, coming to the town to study at the kind of Confucian Academy or whatever, and getting picked on because, they were just from a poorer background or whatever, or they didn't have the family name. So there was a definite class system. And then when the Meiji Restoration happened in 1868, they actually put in something called kazokure, which is basically the aristocracy law. So all the former feudal lords got titles like, duke or prince or, marquis or whatever.
Yeah.
And that continued up until 1945. So after the war, the GHQ got rid of it.
GHQ got rid of it. Okay.
That sounds like something the GHQ would do.
So all those families had ties to the military, the navy. Like in Britain, obviously the kind of royalty and aristocrats have ties with the kind of armed forces and things like that. It was the same in Japan. So they wanted to cut all that off.
Yeah.
And kind of flatten society down. And then the education system brought into Japan was also post Second World War, based on an American system.
A very industrialized way of educating.
Yeah. So there's two stages really. Meiji period, everybody, all the samurai, the commoners, the merchants had to go to the same schools. That was one thing.
Yeah.
And then after the Second World War, the aristocrats and all those kind of people as well had to become regular citizens too. So two stages.
But now in Japan, after the GHQ squashed everything, we have kind of a flattening of everything.
Yeah.
Then we have like a class system, I think, that kind of emerged that's based on wealth.
Yeah.
Right. And so like we have like these business tycoons in Tokyo and stuff like that, where they walk around like gods, basically. You see these big shacho types, the CEO types that walk into a restaurant or something like that, and everybody's just like fawning over them.
Yeah.
I can imagine that was the case with like samurai lords and things like that in the past, right? And one time, oh my god, I want to talk about this really quick. One time I saw a not a yokozuna, but like a sumo wrestler walking down the street in his garb and in his kimono and everything. He had an entourage of women just following him around.
Wow.
And he was like, I didn't know this because this is the first time I actually stood next to a sumo wrestler, but they're super tall. And he had all these women just like following him around. I was just like, dude, you're living the life. You could eat every day, all you want to eat. You got all these hot girls, man. If I come back in a second life, I'm going to be like you, bro. But anyway, so let's talk about now. So we do have classes in Japan, right? We have like the working class, like the poor single mothers and things like that. And then we have, I would suggest that the majority of the country is probably somewhere in the middle class. I don't know. What would you consider middle class in England? How would you define it as if I just looked at somebody I knew, not based on their name, but like.
So, house owner.
House owner.
Probably kids go to a comprehensive school or maybe a private school.
Okay.
Owns a car, maybe two. Go on holiday, at least once a year, overseas holiday. That kind of thing, really.
So like your typical, when you see a movie of a family, that's like your typical middle class.
Yeah.
Natsuki, how would you define middle class?
It's a problem. Yeah, because I thought how to define middle class is about money.
Yeah.
But we can ask them how much money they make.
Well, in Japan, we basically know how much people make because if they have a job,
like average money.
Yeah, you can he's a doctor, so he makes $10,000 a month. You know that.
Yeah. So my image is like in countryside, people who make more than $1,000. How do you say
$100,000 a year.
100,000 a year is up more than 100,000 yen is upper class, but in Tokyo, there are so many people like that.
Yeah.
So it's different. It depends on where
area.
you live. Yeah, area.
That's also true in America. If you live in Silicon Valley and you make $150,000 a year, you're poor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just going to rent. You could buy that money. I mean, your rent is like 10,000-ish, a month. So for a crappy little apartment in Silicon Valley.
I mean, I think it's about quality of life in the region that you live in. That's the kind of real line for me that draws it, and also the ability to do things like take out an overseas holiday or a holiday in Japan as well.
Yeah.
I think those would be the two kind of main things. The class from status and prestige does still kind of exist.
Explain how.
It's more of like a kind of respect for people, but it's not really related to daily life so much. So when they meet somebody from one of these prestigious families, there's a lot of respect for them and things like that. But they're not treated in the same way as like an aristocrat in the UK might be. I don't think it's a slightly different interaction.
We had I think it was the prince or the princess from the royal family here visit where we are, and it was the biggest thing that everybody was talking about.
Yeah, that's different. That's different.
But I completely didn't understand that. I don't understand aristocracy. I don't get it. I don't understand your royalty. Oh, and by the way, rest in peace, Prince.
It's not absurd.
But like, I don't understand royalty. I don't get it. Like, people are fascinated with. I get the princesses on Disney. I get that. I don't understand anything else about it. I'm like, why do you people care about these people? Like,
but in Japan too, we care.
that's what I'm saying. You two come from countries that have an aristocracy, but why do you care?
I mean, you have one in the US as well, really.
What, Paris Hilton?
I mean, the president's an elected figure, but he's essentially a king, right? They come from,
Yeah, but but half the country hates him.
Yeah, but they come. Yeah, I mean, not everybody loves the royals.
Who
as
hates
well.
name me one person who hates the Queen. That's not a single person in the world.
There's a lot of people in Britain who don't like the monarchy.
Okay, the symbol of the monarchy.
Abolitionist type, people.
But nobody hates the Queen. Everybody loves her.
I mean, I used to think, like, why do we need the monarchy?
Yeah.
When I was a student and things like that. I thought,
isn't it like a symbol of the country?
Yeah, it's like a symbol of the country, and also kind of the history and kind of pageantry of it's kind of got some glamour to it, I suppose. So it does make a lot of money for tourism.
It's expensive, but it does bring in the tourism.
Yeah, I mean, it balances out, actually. If you look at the numbers, I mean, they actually do, have a net benefit.
When the royal wedding happened, that was like, dude, that was super big PR for your country.
So I don't think there's any sense in abolishing things like that. And also just a sense of tradition and identity, I think, that it carries along with it.
It's just historical.
Yeah. I mean, the US, though, you say it's a democracy, but I mean, maybe there's, 5 or 6 families who could potentially fund a presidential run anyway.
That never happens. What are you talking about?
It's like, who can, like, how many Bushes do you want to be your president or whatever?
If we can, 0. No more, please.
But those dynasties do exist, right?
It does happen, but that's something that we're coming to terms with now. It's like a newish thing that was happening because like certain people have just been allowed to gather so much wealth, especially since the Reagan era. But after World War II, the top taxation bracket was something like 92%.
Yeah.
They took 92% of your money away, right? And they redistributed that to the lower classes, and you started to get. That's when we had this burgeoning middle class in the 1960s and 70s, and that's why everybody could buy a GM car and have their 2 cars and big house and stuff like that. Once that taxation rate of the upper class went away, and it's effectively 0. I mean, basically, with all the tax loopholes and everything, people at the top don't pay taxes. With that happening, the lower class, and I define lower class as people who basically can't go, like, if you can't miss a paycheck, right? If you live paycheck to paycheck, if you can't miss a paycheck, and if you can't, like, a medical emergency will destroy your family. Or like, you can't afford to send your kids to school, or you can't even afford to pay your bills. This is all lower class.
Yeah.
Right? And so this class in America is growing.
Yeah.
But I don't see it so much in Japan.
Well, I think the problem in Japan is you've got familial wealth as well. So Japanese people are big savers.
Their mom and dad.
They save a lot more money than other countries do. And you've got that family support network as well. So you'll see a lot of like adults in the 30s living at home with the parents still. I know people at work who get a bento made every morning by the mum. Which they bring to work. It's just like, to me, it seems weird. But
it's embarrassing for us because we want our independence, but I think that it's financially much more responsible.
Well, they have a huge amount of disposable income then, because they don't pay. A lot of them don't pay. Well, some people pay rent, some people don't.
I don't know any parent that takes rent from their adult children.
Yeah,
it's rare.
So those people often have like a nice-ish car. They often go out for meals in the evening and stuff like that. So they're subsidized basically.
We call them parasite children, right? But that's because they get past a certain age of threshold of marriage, and so they just stay at home forever. And like they get into their 40s and 50s. If you're one of these people, I don't hate you. I'm just defining the word.
Yeah.
It's in their 40s and 50s, and they just live off mom and dad, and they have like a part-time job or something like that.
I suppose if you look at it another way, you could say it's a reciprocal relationship, because when they get old and need to be cared for, then the kid should really do that, having lived with them for so long. So that's another thing as well. And obviously the cost of getting on the property ladder here is very, very high as well. It's not easy to...
Can we talk about that? You two are homeowners. Yeah. I'm not. I'm a renter. In America, home ownership is something that everybody wants to do.
Right.
But basically, it's like a life goal. And if you have your house, and especially if you've paid off your house, you've made it. Like, you're good, right? You guys as property owners in Japan, how do you feel about owning a home? Is it something that because you both rented and lived in a home.
Yeah.
So is it something that you really looked forward to, and is it everything that you wanted?
I never saw it as a goal. It just happened.
Yeah, me too. It's just happened.
I woke up one day and I was like, what is this house that I live in?
But it's like renting gives you the freedom to move. That's the thing. You're not tied into one place.
Yeah. And if you hate your neighbors, which I do, you can move.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a goal for a lot of people in Japan to build a house. not to own a house, but to build one.
And they don't sell them. Once they're done with the house, they just tear it down and build a new house there.
Yeah.
But the way of thinking is actually changing. Buying a house is thinking of world after after World War II. After World War II. So recently, young generation don't want to buy their own house because, like you said, it's like something you tied up.
Yeah,
with.
you're tied up.
Burden, yeah.
And there's no resale value. In other countries, the whole idea of equity is that you buy a house and then you take care of it.
Yeah.
And so as you're taking care of it, the relative inflation around you continues to go up, but your value of your house stays the same relative to inflation. And so you constantly, it's like you're making money off of your house, kind of.
Well, the thing about, building a house and why people build houses in Japan is very traditional, actually. So shrines, for example, get rebuilt every 20 years or so.
Yeah.
So they tear them down and do like shikinen sengu, it's called, where they rebuild it. So that kind of rebuilding of buildings is a common thing in Japanese culture. But with modern materials, it doesn't necessarily need to happen.
Don't you feel like there's two types of homes in Japan? There's the ones that are made to be like centennial homes that just last forever, the ones that are traditionally made from wood.
Yeah.
And then you have the throwaway plastic ones that are made from Toyota. Seriously, Toyota makes houses.
Yeah.
And you're just like...
Yeah, I mean, it makes the town look shit as well.
Yeah, they look like crap.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big problem with architecture in Japan, I think. Some architecture is very, very good and extremely well made, obviously. But general town planning is actually very poor, I think.
They rely on brutalism a lot. It looks like communist Russia. If you're a Russian, I love you too. But like it's just concrete everywhere. I mean, because they have earthquakes and natural disasters, but it's just brutalism.
Well, the problem with that is the aesthetic of beauty in Japan went from traditional Japanese buildings to modernization very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the time to build up that aesthetic for Western buildings in the same way that people in the West did. So the early buildings around the Meiji period were built by Westerners, like Isaiah Konda, the British architect. But after that, they kind of went into this, easy throw-up type housing.
Prefabricated.
Prefabs, after World War II again.
And also, before people said we should buy a house because when we get older, we don't buy a house, we have no place to live.
Yeah.
Because owner
security. It's for security.
For security.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same thing that we get in other countries. They say to retire, buy a house and invest in it, right?
But now, so Japanese population is going down, and then there are obviously a place that we can live for a long time
cheaply,
so we don't need to buy anymore.
There are areas in the countryside that will pay you to live in a house,
right.
Like they will literally give you like $10,000 to move to their town and live in a house that's already there, that's vacant, and because they hope that you'll stay there, make a family, and pay taxes. I
mean, that kind of thing. There are a lot of empty houses, and now I see a lot of younger people reforming them and using them as either a second house or a business.
Yeah, that happened in Detroit after the big like white flight from Detroit. There was all these empty homes, and so hippies moved in, basically.
Right.
Hippies and drug dealers. I mean, are they the same thing?
It's not good, right? Isn't it? Is it good?
I wouldn't move to Detroit. If you're from Detroit, I love you too.
It's not going well today, is it, for everybody in the world?
Dude, I would not live in Detroit. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe it'll come back in like a couple generations, but it's just not a place to live right now.
What interested me about Japanese class is that you'll get some really wealthy people, and sometimes you just can't tell that they've got money.
You were talking about
weird.
this, like rich guys in Japan. It's the humility. Like they don't flaunt it.
Or they don't know how to use it, is maybe another way of looking at it. I don't know. It depends, though. It depends on who they are. So you see some very kind of erudite type people who, have got a lot of cash and they buy nice things, have nice cars or whatever. And then you see some kind of guy driving around in a K truck, the little white trucks or whatever, with all farming equipment in the back. And you find out they've got loads of land, and they've got a huge amount of money in the bank. But they just don't use it. They just go to Nishimuta, the regular local supermarket with everybody else.
They really all like to be kind of same, byodo, right? And so like, I don't know. And then the other thing is actually there's a couple, but there's not a lot of super, super rich people in Japan.
Yeah.
If you look at the list of the world's top richest people, I think only 1 or 2 are Japanese out of the first 20.
So Son Masayoshi
Uniqlo and SoftBank. And SoftBank's CEO isn't 100% Japanese either. He's like half Korean, right? And so like, and his way of thinking is very non-Japanese, I think. So, but yeah.
But even CEO level, you don't get a huge salary, right?
Not compared to the United States or UK, for sure.
So the interesting thing there is, though, that the company subsidizes an awful lot of stuff that the companies in the US won't subsidize, I don't think.
I mean, for expenses and stuff like that.
Expenses, business trips, like drinking in the evening, meals, all kinds of stuff.
But at the same time, CEO pay in America, like if you're a top company and you're the CEO, you make like $100 million a year.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in Japan.
No.
During the 2008 financial crisis, the CEO of JAL lowered his salary to 1 yen.
Right.
So his annual salary was 1 yen. His wife made him a bento, and he ate in the cafeteria with everybody else to show his support for the company during the financial crisis. That doesn't happen in America.
But I think social status does carry with the company in Japan a lot more than it does perhaps in the US.
Where you work.
Yeah. Where you work, what your position is within that organization.
Your title is big. Bucho, shacho.
Yeah.
Tacho,
yeah.
right?
That's what you give the business card. It's your avatar. It's who I am.
It's your avatar.
That's what it is.
Here's what level I am. What level are you? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Just a mister. I see.
But Bucho at a little company and Bucho at a big company is very different.
Yeah, but still, but both are Bucho.
Yeah, but it's not the same. There's still that as well. Even if you've got the same title, there's a bit of a balancing act.
I think we're talking mostly in this conversation. We've been talking a lot about men. Let's talk about the women in this country. There's a growing number of women who are working class or poor, just poor, who can't afford, especially the single mothers who can't afford to pay their bills and things like that. I want to talk about the options that these women have in this country. In America, I think they get on welfare, stuff like that. There's some programs, especially depending on where you live. In Japan, I see a lot of these women get night jobs. They become like red light district workers and things like that.
Could be.
Is this just my people that I know, or like?
Probably.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge way of them to finance their lives if they're a single mother.
I mean, there isn't a great deal of support for single mothers at work, I don't think, for one, and secondly, comparatively, there are far fewer women in management positions and senior positions than there are men, right?
Yeah.
So the odds are really stacked against single mothers, especially. And it doesn't really need to be like that. I mean, this pandemic's changed a lot of things in the way that people work. Using Zoom and things like that, or whatever. You don't actually physically have to be somewhere, to be able to work. It's just whether Japan can catch up to that or not.
Also, the other thing that, as you're talking about this, like one thing that Japan hasn't caught up to is a woman will enter a job at a career somewhere, find herself a husband, have a child, leave the workforce and never return.
Yeah.
Right. And that now some women, they want to be the what do you call it? I don't want to say housewife, but the homemaker.
Yeah.
And that's their dream. The husband makes enough money for them to support that lifestyle. That's okay. But in a lot of cases, the woman goes back as a part-time worker at something easy. She doesn't go back to a career.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choice, isn't it? The thing is having the choice. You can't criticize women who want to raise children or whatever like that and stay at home. In the same way, you can't criticize men who want to do that. But the option should be there to be able to have a career.
Stay-at-home dad I've never met in Japan, not once.
I have, yeah. Yeah, 2 people I know.
Were they happy?
Yeah, because
really?
the wife made more money than they did. And also, they were interested in the kids. They weren't interested in they didn't really like their job so much, maybe. Or they felt they could go back to it at any time.
If they can do it and be happy, I'm all for it. I've never seen it.
No, 2 people like that, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But Natsuki, what about you? I assume you have a lot of female friends. Are any of them single mothers?
Yes.
And is the situation there okay?
Yeah, her situation is okay. She has a career, so it depends. It really depends. But like you said, I have no such friends actually. But I guess there's an apartment and only single mother can live near my house.
Really?
Yeah, and then I have not been inside, so I don't know what is inside. What
maybe
it
it's
is
good.
like. But yeah, and then also I heard those women are like run away from her husband, so they don't know that the husband cannot find them.
Oh, like a refuge.
Like a refuge.
We once did a little bit of a location shot at the recycling facility here, and there were single mothers who ran away from their husbands working garbage jobs. And I was like, what the hell, Japan? I was like,
they don't want to find out where they live.
Yeah, but I was like, come on, they got they're beaten housewives, and then Japan was like, oh, we'll just put them on the trash duty.
Yeah, but that's her choice. That's her choice.
I was just like, oh god, the optics of this are so bad.
Yeah, that was a sad situation.
But anyway, talking about options for single moms, I mean, they do have the Hoikuen support here.
Yeah,
Right.
if you get it, you've got to get in though first. So
Yeah.
you've got to be on a waiting list.
And single mothers, hoikuen fee is very cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also a public apartment, and if you're a single mother and have kids, it's only like less than 10,000 yen.
Yeah, there is. I will say that Japan does a lot of good to support the poor. They really do.
The medical system's not bad as well, really.
Let's talk about the medical
You know
system.
what I
That's a
mean?
good point.
So it's like half subsidized. It's like kind of a halfway house between the US and the UK. Probably more towards the UK style of doing things.
In the UK, you guys have the, what's it called?
NHS.
Yeah. And so does that cover dental or is it just only...
Yeah, it covers dental as well, yeah.
But there are waiting lists and stuff like that. There are
Yeah,
issues
you got to
with it.
wait.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the treatment that you need to have. And obviously now, things are a bit different with the current situation. But yeah, I think it's a good safety net.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a condition that needs treating, you can get it treated.
Yeah.
Regardless of your income.
Does the system so what in Japan what we do is like we have basically everything is covered that you need, and then if you pay extra you can get extra special treatment. Can you do that in the UK?
You can go to private hospitals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to do that. It's quite expensive, but the treatment is very good. And the rooms and things tend to be better as well as all private rooms and stuff. But I mean, Japan covers about 70% of most treatments and things like that.
It depends on what it is, but you can also get like additional insurance on top of the federal insurance, and then it's like you basically can get everything covered.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get into like the private insurance, which by the way is way cheaper than it is in America to get the supplementary insurance, it's like you get paid money every month if you're in the hospital. They'll give you like every day, like you're in the hospital, they give you like some mayan or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think one thing with Clash you need to talk about those schools, because schools are a big thing about where you get your peer group from, the education that you receive.
Well, that's why people go to Harvard, not for the education, but for the peer group, right?
Yeah.
For the connections.
I mean, I noticed like people that are wealthy in Tokyo and stuff like that. There's certain schools that they want the kids to go to, right?
Yeah.
And they'll move house to get near those schools.
The schools
and
are
stuff.
so like all the schools in Japan are basically. I mean, like the gap is not that big. I'm sorry, Todai versus like your average run of the mill university. That what you're learning in the school is not that different.
I think no, it is.
Really?
Yeah.
They rank so low on global ranking lists.
Yeah, I know. Now it's not. They're not a world leader in the university ranking tables, but
you have to scroll way to the bottom to find a Japanese school on the
15 is the toppest, like Todai or Kyodai.
I forgot what ranking it was, but I think it went down to like 20 something at one point. Josh, maybe if you could look it up. But yeah, it was like they've come down so far.
Yeah, but to get into those universities is still a challenge. There, it's not easy at all. But and I think the tables as well are actually based on research output. So there is some kind of question that needs to be asked about whether those are accurate or not as well. I mean, my university's in the top 100. So.
Wow, nice.
I went from a top 1,000 university to a different university because I had. That's another thing. That's true. Like Japanese families have to pay for their kids to go to school, and they basically subsidize their entire life.
Yeah, it's expensive.
I paid for myself to go to school, and then like I had to actually switch schools in the middle of my education because my family had a crisis and I had to go take care of them. And so like that's not something that really happens that much here.
Yeah.
16.
36.
36.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know what this list is, but yeah, I mean, they just keep going down and down and down on the world ranking.
Yeah. I mean, there are private schools and things like that have got kind of elite, kids in and things like that.
Yeah.
KO is one, isn't it?
KO University, yeah.
What's the name of the very famous school in London?
Eton.
Eton,
yeah.
It's a famous
So,
one.
if you go through, Eton, Oxford, Cambridge.
But Oxford is like,
University.
like you just say the word Oxford and it just brings the room to a stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just it has prestige to it.
Yeah.
If you say, I went to Tokyo University, be like, oh, did you have fun?
No, still it has a brand.
In
In Japan it does,
Yeah.
not worldwide it does.
Maybe.
I mean.
Yeah, I like to just say I went to Oxford, and I didn't go to university there. I just went
there.
Just went there and got drunk and came home at 3:00 in the morning.
I hear that like the professors, like Tolkien, for example, would just be seen in the pub normally getting drunk.
Yeah, they're all in the pub after they've been doing the lecturing or whatever they do. So yeah, I went to Oxford and got shit-faced. So.
Oxford, I remember looking this up, but the Oxford University, I think, predates the Incan Empire or something like that. It's like it's crazy.
It can't be that old.
Oh, it's old. Oxford is super old.
Yeah.
But like, Todai, how old is Tokyo Daigaku?
Don't ask me.
Why do you hate Todai so much?
I just think it's like their ranking just went so through the floor after the bubble and everything. It's like, it's sad.
Yeah. How old is Todai?
Oh, we don't. We're looking up. We're looking up.
I don't know.
But to speak to schools, for example, like the idea of private schools in Japan is a big deal because the public schools aren't really that great.
Right.
They're not as bad as shitholes in America. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing them to that, but like they're not as good as like the really good schools either.
Yeah.
See, Oxford University is older than the Aztecs.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really old. It came from like 1100.
That right?
AD or something like that. I can't see if it's there. 1096.
1096. Wow.
Yeah, it's your country, bro. You know too much about Japan, not enough about England.
Yeah, probably need to learn some more.
Let's talk about wealth. So in America, we have cars and we have houses and we have property and we have giant televisions, and so we like to think that we're wealthy. And
television.
and in a way that is a form of wealth, right? That is a form of wealth. But at the same time, a lot of Americans have put that on their credit cards and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about Japanese wealth. I mean, like, I live in a tiny little apartment. Tiny. Like, the apartment that I live in right now could fit inside one of the rooms of my American apartment they used to have. Is this wealthy living? Like, what is this? And my apartment, by the way, is nice and expensive. So
yeah. I mean, it's location, isn't it?
For me, for sure.
Yeah.
Dead city center.
I mean, like, these tiny little box apartments in Tokyo and stuff like that. I mean, I just probably couldn't live there.
Like, you see the famous people, they follow them to their apartment.
I know, you're like, is that it?
Yeah, like, you live in a shoebox, my friend.
Yeah. So, I suppose property price, you're paying for the address as well, right? The status of the address.
But even if you have a big... I mean, I like your house, Alex, but your house is unique. Like, most houses in the countryside, they're kind of crap, man.
Yeah.
And like, there's no central heating or cooling in Japan, so like, you're always cold or you're always hot.
Yeah.
Like, there's only one toilet in most houses.
Recently, the kind of house builders are changing, I think, and you can get like yukadanbo, the underfloor heating
and a really expensive electricity bill with it too.
It's hot. It's expensive, but it's changing slightly. But it depends on where you put your value. If you put your value in living in the middle of Tokyo and wanting to go to a restaurant whenever you want to go there, just stepping outside and having all that convenience right in front of you, then maybe you'll pay a huge sum of money to live in a tiny apartment there. But if you want more space and and that kind of more relaxed lifestyle, I guess you might live in the country and buy a big house or something. I don't know. There's just options, right?
I think, like I said, it depends where you put your value.
Second houses are a good thing to look at. If you have a small apartment but another house in the countryside or another house somewhere else, that's often a good status indicator of wealth and social status, I think. So I don't know how many people have like.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe I should invest in a countryside house.
Yeah, you get one for cheap here.
Get one for free. Yeah. Pretend to live there.
Rich people who live in countryside buy like nice mansion in the city.
A condo.
And then for kids, because kids can go to school in the
city. Yeah.
I would suggest to answer the title prompt of this show. I would say that the majority of Japanese people are probably middle class.
I think the majority of Japanese people think they're middle class.
Right, think them.
But if you dig a little deeper, there's quite a lot of wealth inequality.
Oh.
So when they go abroad, I know some fairly wealthy people who go abroad and things like that on holiday, and they go to some really nice places. Yeah. So it's like, they spend it where people don't see it.
I believed myself that I belong to the middle class, but like the salary that I make and my husband make is less than that my dad make. Before. Right.
Well, your dad's a unique situation because he I don't want to say he got lucky. He worked very hard, but he also made a business during the right time.
Right. But my point is that's why I have to work. If my a husband make a lot of money,
Oh,
maybe I
you
have
hear this? You hear this, husband?
maybe I have a chance to make a choice to be a houseworker.
I would actually suggest that I'm sorry, I know your financial situation. You could totally quit your job and be fine, but you want to have a double income.
Yeah, double income, because to live nicely.
Yeah. To live nicely, right? So I mean, I don't know. The double income thing is not necessary where we are, but it is necessary in the more like urban areas.
Yeah,
it's becoming more necessary.
I think the thing is, right, the general quality of life in Japan for the average earner, so the median income type person, isn't that bad. So the quality of food, for example, here,
it's amazing.
If you go out to a restaurant, it's quite hard to find a disappointing restaurant. You know what I mean?
You know how rare it is when you go to a restaurant and you're like, this is crap. And it's like the gap between crappy restaurants is like years.
So, I mean, I thought I found a shit restaurant was about 10 years ago. I found somewhere that was really shit. Everywhere else, maybe it's not amazing, but it's not bad.
It's pretty good.
You know what I mean? So that level of care with the food and things like that means that, like, BQ Gurume, they call it in Japanese, like B-level, you know, gourmet or whatever. There's a lot of that stuff that's fairly reasonable.
It's very reasonable.
Yeah. If you want to go to the super high-end restaurants, it's going to cost you a lot more money. Yeah. But, you know, unless you've got that kind of wealth and you're from that kind of background, you're not going to go to those places anyway.
Honestly, I don't understand. I go to like the really expensive sushi restaurants sometimes with my senpais, and I'm like, I don't understand. Yeah. I'm like, why does this cost so much money?
It's because we are 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't get it. So I'm a cheap date.
Well, we're going to one tonight, so yeah.
No, like I know the places that I like, but I also like quality food for a good price. Like I'm not flaunting cash ever. So like, but there are very rarely that situation in Japan, like where you actually see a baller like throw down cash.
Yeah. No.
It's just rare.
I saw the other day driving down the street towards Sengayan where I work, a guy in a Lamborghini who must have been about like 20, and it had lights all up the bonnet and down the sides as well, like flashing LEDs going
on.
So he'd souped it up, and then 2 cars behind was a kid in a Ferrari, about the same age.
They probably live at home with their moms, and that's the only thing they spend their annual income on. Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah, but I was like, where did you come from? But,
their mom's house.
Yeah, there is a Lamborghini Aventador in Kagoshima as well.
Yeah.
I know who owns that though, so yeah.
But going back to what you were talking about, I want to touch on one more thing with the medical thing. A lot of reason that middle class go to lower class in America is medical debt.
Yeah.
Because America's medical system is you guys need to get your crap together. But the Japanese medical system, I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to pay for it long term, but it's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they have more MRI machines per capita than any other place in the world, for what I understand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, dude, if you need a surgery or a scan, you just get it. Like
the only thing for me with the Japanese medical system is because there's so many small private hospitals that are subsidized by government funds, you don't know where to go if you have a condition, right? You've got to know which kind of hospital to go to.
I have a bunch of doctor friends, so I just ask them.
Yeah. And if you don't like a doctor, you can just go to another one.
Yeah.
But your judgment of which is a good doctor might not be right, you know.
In the UK, are you like, do you have like your area doctor, like a school?
Yeah, like a GP, they call it, general practitioner. So you go there and they send you off, like do triage basically, and send you to somewhere else. I mean, they could be a bad doctor as well, you know, you never really know. But.
All right, guys, we got to close down the show, but let's talk about this. So the three of us, I consider myself middle class. Do you guys consider yourself middle class?
I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm middle class. I'm aspiring upwards, though.
I'm aspiring upwards. That's a good way to put it. We're aspiring upwards, middle class people living in Japan.
Yeah.
I would close out the show saying if you want to have a pretty good general life, if you're living in Japan, like it doesn't really matter what job you do. You could pretty much get it. I mean, like we are kind of a little bit entitled. We're privileged because we have a different situation than the Japanese do with their upbringing. But if you work hard, you can make a pretty decent living here. And you know, like I said, like Alex was saying, if you define your value in going out and having a good meal and having a community and a safe place with a good medical system, it's a great place to be middle class here. And there's a big middle class here.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's been our show. If you guys have any comments or if you're Russian and you're angry at me, just leave us a comment in the comment section below, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, Josh here. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Small Talk Japan. Small Talk Japan is filmed and recorded in Kagoshima at Story Studios. This week's episode stars Mitch, Natsuki, and Alex, and is produced by me, Josh. The executive producer is Michi, and hair services done by Drops Temonkan. This podcast is brought to you in part by Stapleton A. Kaiwa, Leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. Thanks again for watching, and if you enjoyed the show, click here to subscribe and click here to watch more. See ya!